The male and female leads were living a blissful, perfect life. Their wedding of the century had just been held in a lavish, ostentatious way that splashed across every front page. Meanwhile, I was curled up in a tiny rented room. I looked up at the TV screen, at their beaming faces, because I was just the cannon fodder supporting actress in this novel. The man who was supposed to be my husband was the main villain, the one who kept obstructing the male lead's path to success. 3 days ago, he'd just been defeated by the hero. His business empire collapsed in a single night. I ground my teeth. If I'd transmigrated just 3 days earlier, I might be in some private villa right now, driving a supercar, maybe even having my own private jet. Right now I had one cold, rubbery donut in my hand. I took a savage bite, chewing as I started recalculating my own survival route. The story I'd fallen into was called The Pampered Goddess, the overbearing tycoon's crazy love, an old-school Mary Sue novel. It told the love story between the male lead, Leo Lei, and the female lead, Elaine Xiao, a love filled with chases, misunderstandings, and melodrama. In the end, they reunited and lived happily ever after. As for me, I'd transmigrated into the body of Nina Liu, wife of Adrian Lei, Leo's uncle. In the Lei family, there were 2 sons. The eldest was Leo's father, who had passed away early. The younger was the son of the second wife, named Adrian Lei. Old Master Lei only had Adrian when he was already old, so he doted on him endlessly. But in Leo's eyes, Adrian's mother was a gold digger, someone blocking his path to power. To be fair, Adrian was a little pitiful, spoiled as a child, but then he'd built an entire business empire with his own hands as an adult. For hundreds of chapters, he sailed smoothly, only to be bankrupted in the last 3 chapters just to make the male lead look more impressive. I glanced at the TV inside. Behind me, a low, hoarse male voice sounded. "What are you sighing about?" I jumped and turned around, almost dropping my donut. A tall man with a cold, handsome face was standing there. "Now that I'm bankrupt, there's nothing left for you to take from me," he said flatly. "Tomorrow we'll go file for divorce. Pack your things and go back to your parents' place." He turned and walked inside. I stood there like I'd been struck by lightning. I didn't need anyone to introduce him. I knew at a glance this was my unfortunate husband, Adrian Lei. And the reason he was that cold was simple. The original Nina had not been a good person. The original Nina Liu's family had some money. Compared to the Lei family it was nothing, but she was still a rich girl living in a villa, driving a luxury car. But that wasn't enough for her. She had a truly beautiful face and wanted to marry someone even richer, even more powerful, and that person was Adrian. To get what she wanted, Nina set up a trap. She arranged for the 2 of them to be caught sleeping in the same bed right when old Master Lei walked in. She cried as she said she loved Adrian sincerely, that her reputation was ruined and she could never marry anyone else. Old Master Lei laughed. His health was getting worse by the day, and the thing he worried about most was his youngest son marrying as soon as possible. The idea that Adrian might get it over with pleased him. As for Adrian, he didn't care much. To him, marrying a little socialite like that was just throwing some money to please his father. So the original Nina got her wish and married Adrian. They lived under the same roof, but in a whole year they saw each other fewer than 5 times. He was busy making money. She was busy spending it. Outrageous. I sternly criticized the original. With a face and body like Adrian, the original was only interested in spending his money, having him right there and not enjoying him at all. That said, I still decided to pack up and run away. Priority number 1 was staying alive. The husband was bankrupt. If I clung to him, sooner or later I'd be dragged down by the plot and die with him. While I was packing my luggage, my phone suddenly rang. The caller ID showed my mom. "Hello, Mom." I picked up without hesitation. I was going back to my parents anyway. "Nina, are you free today? Come home for a visit." "I'm free." I was just about to come back. A perfect match. I just decided to go home, and they called. After I finished packing, I hesitated, then decided I should at least tell my unlucky husband I was going out. Knock, knock. No response. "Adrian?" I called. Silence. I lowered my voice. "Honey?" After a moment, his voice drifted out. "What is it?" "I'm going out for a bit. I'll probably be back late." Just seriously? Ice cold. I left the house and took the bus. Everything went smoothly. I soon arrived at my family's front door. A villa. My eyes grew misty. The life of a rich young lady. I had returned. "Mom, Dad, I'm home." "Nina, you're back. Come in. Today I made your favorite braised ribs." As soon as I stepped through the door, a beautiful woman greeted me with a smile. Her voice was so gentle it made my heart melt. My mom really did look like she'd walked out of a painting. And on top of that, she could cook. The very definition of a rare treasure. Maybe I was this pretty thanks to great genetics. "Mr. Liu, your daughter is home." Mom called toward the kitchen. A slightly chubby figure came out, wearing a bright ink Peppa Pig apron. I nearly burst out laughing. "So Dad was the chef. You came back at the perfect time. The ribs are just ready. Sit down and eat." Dad smiled kindly, his round face full of Buddha-like benevolence. I obediently sat and picked up my chopsticks. My parents sat across from me, clearly wanting to say something but hesitating, glancing at me, then at each other. "If you have have something to say, just say it. I looked up, unable to hold back. Sweetheart, are you alright? Dad asked carefully. I'm fine. The food's delicious, I said, reaching for another rib. As long as you're eating well. Haha, I love watching you eat. You were always dieting before. This is much better. I'll cook for you again next time. Stop stalling and get to the point. My beautiful mom cut in. She pulled out a bank card and set it on the table. Nina, this is all the cash we could scrape together. Take it and give it to Adrian. I froze. Give it to him? What for? He must be short on money right now. We can't help much, but we hope you'll give him this so he has a bit more to rebuild his business. My jaw dropped. Rebuild his business. In my head, one big line appeared. No way. How could a reborn villain possibly outshine the male lead's halo? That's a waste. I started. We shouldn't throw money away like. Before I could finish, Dad's face hardened. What are you saying? How can it be a waste? Adrian is going through his toughest time. As his wife, you should support him. What wife? If they knew I just dropped into this body, they'd probably faint. Dad continued. Back then, when you snagged that piece of swan meat, now the swan is in trouble and you want to turn your back? What did I teach you growing up? Piece of swan meat. So Dad was implying I was a toad? I stroked my pretty face. Had anyone ever seen a toad this gorgeous? Enough. Mom pulled my hand. Nina, old Mr. Lay passed away a year ago, and less than 6 months later, Madame Lay followed. Leo has always had a difficult temperament and never wanted Adrian to live in peace. Now Adrian has no one left. We're his only relatives. He may look cold, but he's always been good to you and to us. Dad nodded. That's right. He's helped me quite a lot too. In this industry it's hard to get by without someone like him. After their ideological education session, I had no choice but to obediently accept the bank card and a thermos of hot braised ribs, then head back. On the way, the night wind blew through my hair as I muttered to myself, if the original story had already ended, did the protagonist's halo still work? Could a villain actually stage a comeback? Before I found an answer, I'd reached our front door. Knock, knock, honey, I called. This time, the door opened quickly. What is it? Adrian's voice was as cold as ever. Gorgeous man, icy tone. Honestly dangerous. You haven't eaten, right? My dad just made braised ribs. I brought you some. I raised the thermos like an offering. Thanks. I don't need it. So polite. We're family. I grabbed his wrist and dragged him to the living room. Try it. My dad's braised ribs are the pinnacle of human cuisine. Try it once and you'll remember it for life. I said like a sales rep. Maybe he couldn't stand my enthusiasm. In the end, Adrian picked up his chopsticks, had a taste, and then ate 3 big bowls of rice. I grinned smugly. Told you, it's amazing. Then, very casually, I slid the bank card toward him. This is what my parents scraped together. Take it. We hope it can help you through this tough period. He paused, his gaze wavering a little. No need. Take it back. Your dad's company isn't exactly having an easy time right now. I understood immediately. In the business world, profit was king. Dad was Adrian's father-in-law, but he didn't need the male lead's help to be targeted. A man like Dad, with a reputation for integrity and long-term relationships, only survived thanks to loyal clients and credibility. Otherwise, he'd have been dragged into the vortex long ago. Just take it. This is their goodwill. Use what you need. I shoved the card into his hand. Adrian lowered his head, stared for a long moment, then looked at me, his eyes complicated. After a while, he finally said, very softly, thank you. The next morning, I walked out of the bedroom with dark circles under my eyes. The smell of food filled the house. Breakfast was already laid out on the table. Adrian, wearing an apron, set down a plate of fried eggs. You're up. Have breakfast. I sat down, still half asleep, and took a bite. It was delicious. Like criminally delicious. This man wasn't just handsome and smart. He could also cook. Ridiculous. How do you know how to cook? Aren't you a pampered young master? Studied abroad, learned out of necessity. We changed chefs a few times and none suited my taste, so I figured I'd just cook myself. I nodded seriously, already thinking about persuading him to open a restaurant. With skills like this, getting rich would be a matter of time. What else can you cook? There are still so many dishes you haven't made for me yet. This wasn't because I was greedy. It was purely to test his potential for my future wealth. No. Adrian wiped his mouth with a napkin and rejected me on the spot. Unbelievable. How could anyone refuse a meal with a beauty like me? I clutched my heart in pain. What a heartless man. He'd just eaten my dad's ribs yesterday and already he was turning his back on us. I was about to cry in protest when Adrian cut me off. We're out of groceries. Later, come to the supermarket with me. Fine. I swallowed my tears and kept eating. I had to be full if I was going to work hard for my husband. After breakfast, Adrian took me across several streets to a huge supermarket. We walked one loop and I was stunned. A single head of Napa cabbage cost 236 yuan. 3 tomatoes cost 225. How generous of them. This supermarket could have just robbed me outright, but they were kind enough to at least give me some vegetables in return. A proper daylight robbery. Hard to believe that under the light of socialism there could still be such a shameless supermarket. I was about to tell Adrian to leave when I saw him reaching for a pack of carrots. I grabbed his hand. There are only 2 sad little carrots inside, and it costs 288 yuan. How is this normal? I hissed. Hearing that, Adrian looked down at the price tag, then said in all seriousness, does seem a bit cheap. There should be a more expensive kind over there. I'll get that one for you. He started pushing the cart. I almost fell to my knees. Hey, have you forgotten our financial situation? And you still want to eat carrots this expensive? I expressed my deep dissatisfaction with this young master. Aren't these the vegetables you like? You always insist on buying them here. What? I pointed at my nose, then at the carrots. I always eat vegetables this expensive. Adrian nodded. Yeah, whenever we went back to the old house, you specifically told the butler to come here for vegetables. Isn't this your favorite? I don't like them anymore. I quickly tugged his sleeve, stopping him from stuffing even more overpriced produce into the cart. Let's go. We're not buying anything here. See that market in the east? With 288 yuan I could build you an entire carrot kingdom. I marched away triumphantly. Then a sharp pain stabbed my foot. Who had just stepped on my foot? In heels too. I looked up, annoyed, and found a woman in a white dress with red, teary eyes gazing at me pitifully. Judging by her expression, I had questions. Was I the one being stepped on, or was she? I glanced down. Her high heel was planted firmly on my toe. Suddenly, someone yanked me back, freeing my foot. Adrian's face was stormy as he pulled me into his arms. The woman in white, losing her balance as I stumbled backward, fell into someone else's embrace. A man in a suit rushed up, catching her. He bent down, asking worriedly, Elaine, are you okay? I'm fine, Leo, she sniffled. Elaine and Leo? I stared at the two familiar faces and realized something. Weren't these the very same male and female leads whose wedding I'd watched on TV the day I transmigrated? What kind of cursed luck was this? While I was still marveling at my misfortune, Leo raised his head and stared at me with open hostility. Why are you picking on Elaine? He demanded. Who was picking on who here? Who picked on her? She stepped on my foot, I said, incredulous. I was the victim here, yet the troublemaker was acting like the aggrieved one. If you weren't bullying her, why did she almost fall? Maybe her cerebellum is underdeveloped. I was about to fire back more, but Adrian beat me to it. His tone was even colder than Leo's. The lady over there. Leo's eyes bulged with rage, but Elaine quickly stepped in. Leo, it was my fault. I accidentally stepped on Miss Lou's foot. Don't argue, okay? You stepped on me and your man still wants to pick a fight. I haven't even asked you to pay my medical bills. I snapped. What kind of people are you? I just heard Miss Lou say she wanted to buy vegetables at the market, so I was a little surprised and lost my footing. Elaine murmured meekly. Her name suited her, soft and wilting. As soon as she said that, Leo's expression turned smug again. So you can't afford to buy groceries here? You should have said so. After all, Adrian and I are related. If you just asked, I'd give you as much money as you want. Great. 15 million. Thanks. I held out my hand. Cash or transfer? Leo choked, his sarcasm stuck halfway out. What's wrong? Can't take out 15 million? You just said you'd give us money. Don't tell me you were bluffing. That can't be it, right, honey? I turned to Adrian. I might have been imagining it, but Adrian seemed to smirk, a faint dimple appearing in his cheek. Adrian, I didn't expect you to have fallen this far. Your wife has to beg me for money now. Leo sneered as he recovered. There's a saying, Adrian replied coolly. When a tiger falls to the flatlands, the dogs start barking. Aren't you standing here barking in front of me right now? Sharp tongue. This man's venomous mouth suited me. I was about to join in and unleash my own trash-talking skills when the world suddenly spun. By the time I came to, I was in Adrian's arms again. Put me down. I haven't finished arguing yet. I squirmed. If I didn't go all out today, I'd regret it every time I remembered this later. Adrian sighed and carried me right up to Leo and Elaine. I smiled sweetly and leaned in close to Elaine's delicate face. What's so strange about buying vegetables at the market? Weren't you eating market vegetables for the first 20+ years of your life? I murmured. A muddy little sparrow flies up to a high branch and suddenly thinks it's a phoenix that can look down on me. Watching Elaine's pale, tear-streaked face slowly turn green, I felt very satisfied. Let's go, honey, I said, and let my husband carry me away. All the way out of the supermarket, I remained smug. First confrontation with the male and female leads. Husband and wife, total victory. Come on, let's go to the market. I'll build you that carrot kingdom. Adrian set me down on a bench in the plaza and shot me a sideways look. Build what? Doesn't your foot hurt? Now that he mentioned it, it hurt like hell. I'd been so absorbed in arguing that I hadn't felt it. The pain arrived late and almost made me cry. Adrian knelt on one knee, gently removed my shoe and sock, resting my foot on his knee. A large bruise had already spread across the top of my foot, and 2 toes were swollen. He glanced at it once, then scooped me up again. Hospital. This time, I didn't argue. My foot looked bad. Did Elaine hate me enough to stomp me to death? What if the bone was broken? Would it leave a scar? Would I be crippled? The more I thought, the more panicked I became. I cried while blowing my nose, wiping everything on Adrian's shirt. He pressed his lips together and carried me into the hospital, the whole world tilting beneath us. By the time I was set down in front of the orthopedics doctor, I'd calmed down a bit. Doctor, is her foot okay? Adrian asked before I could speak. The doctor examined me, asked a few questions, then smiled smiled kindly. She's fine. No bone damage. Just a mild contusion. Her skin is pale so it looks worse than it is. Once the blood disperses, she'll be fine. As he finished, I heard Adrian exhale in relief. But if you're still worried, you can get an x-ray, the doctor added, handing us a slip. After a few tests, I sat in the hospital hallway, embarrassed as I remembered how dramatically I'd cried. Sorry, your shirt's a mess because of me, I mumbled. Adrian shook his head. It's not your fault. If anything, this happened because of me. Don't say that. Seeing those two today just made me more certain you'll definitely rebuild your business. I rolled my eyes, thinking about Leo's behavior. That guy doesn't look like a leader at all. Adrian glanced at me, voice quiet. If he's that hopeless and I'm a bankrupt loser, doesn't that make me worse? I froze. That's because you weren't the main character. He has the male lead halo. You don't. Of course I couldn't say that. I was trying to think of something to say when Adrian smiled faintly. A tiny dimple appeared at the corner of his lips if you looked closely. Relax. I was teasing you. I know I'm better than him, he said, ruffling my hair. Sit here. I'll go pick up your medicine. After he left, I realized the orthopedist had come back. Your boyfriend? He asked. You two seem really close. I laughed and didn't explain that we were actually married. With strangers, there was no need to clarify. Add me on WeChat, he said, holding out his phone, so I can follow your recovery. Come back in a week for a checkup. I scanned his QR code. You're Nina Lou. Nice name. I'm Ethan Coe. Dr. Coe. Thank you, doctor. Now that I had the chance to really look at him, he seemed 27 or 28, with gold-rimmed glasses that made him look gentle and calm. When he smiled, he looked warm and approachable, completely different from Adrian's cold aura. After getting my meds and some instructions, Adrian and I went home. The following week, my life was like that of a very happy pig. Eat, sleep, wake up, eat again. In 3 days, I gained 4 or 5 pounds. Couldn't even blame anyone. Every day, Adrian made a different dish. Minced pork congee, braised fish, ginseng chicken soup. For a bankrupt man, he cooked like a god. It was terrifying how addictive it was. On the day of my checkup, I texted him, Nina, Adrian, you don't have to come home early to cook tonight. I'm making a lunchbox and bringing it to your office. Adrian, no need. Be careful with your foot. Don't walk too much. Nina, I'm fine. My foot's healed. The hospital's near your company anyway. I'll just swing by. Adrian, okay. Be careful. I smiled, put away my phone, and began cooking. After his bankruptcy, Adrian had started a small company with a few friends, rebuilding from scratch. It made me feel even more sorry for him, so making him lunch was the least I could do. I laid out the ingredients, pulled up a recipe online, and enthusiastically started cooking. I'd never cooked before, but it wasn't too late to learn. 2 hours later, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at a scorched pot and a dish I couldn't quite name. At least it looked edible. It probably wouldn't kill anyone. I comforted myself, packed it into a lunchbox, and headed out cheerfully. The plan: check my foot at the hospital, then drop off lunch for Adrian. Everything went smoothly until I got to the orthopedics department and saw an empty office. Dr. Coe had vanished. He'd specifically told me to come back today. I looked around, frowning. Maybe he had an emergency surgery. Not wanting to delay Adrian's lunch, I decided to stroll around the hospital and see if I could find him. If not, I'd drop off lunch first and come back later. Never would have guessed that this random decision would steer everything in a completely different direction. Halfway around the building, I spotted a very familiar figure at the corner of the corridor. A white dress, high heels, tearful eyes, a pitiful expression. Elaine. What was she doing here? I crept closer and hid behind some greenery. Elaine was crying her heart out in a man's arms. I squinted. Dr. Ethan Coe. Elaine sobbed against his chest while he gently patted her back. Then something strange caught my eye. When she wasn't looking, Ethan's expression darkened for a split second. A flicker of something cold passed through his eyes. Then his face smoothed over and he looked gentle again. Probably imagining it, I muttered. A warm, gentle second male lead shouldn't have that kind of expression. As they seemed to be wrapping up their conversation, I quietly slipped back to his office and pretended I'd been waiting there all along. Sure enough, Ethan returned shortly. Sorry to keep you waiting, Miss Lou, he said with his usual soft smile. It's fine. I just got here. Plus, I just enjoyed a live melodrama. Leaving the hospital, I headed straight for Adrian's company with the lunchbox. Honey, hungry? I cooked for you today, I announced as I walked into his office. But there were a lot of people inside. It looked like a meeting. My soul fled my body. Sorry, I'll just go somewhere far away. I tried to retreat, but Adrian's friend called out to me. Hey, sister-in-law, don't go. Adrian's been waiting for you. His friend, Kevin Sue, was extroverted, playful, with the aura of a charming playboy. But he was actually a good guy and Adrian's only true childhood friend. All right, people, out, Kevin said, shooing everyone out of the office. Don't bother President Lay. You all have no sense of tact. Then he flopped onto the sofa, making no move to leave. What about you? Adrian snapped. Where's your sense of tact? I like being a third wheel, Kevin said lazily. Before Adrian could respond, his secretary knocked and entered. President Lay, President Sue, CEO Leo CEO of Lay Group is here to visit. The CEO of Lay Group, aka the male lead. What was he doing here? Send him in, Adrian said, taking the lunchbox from me and pulling me to the sofa. Kevin sat up straighter, adopting the demeanor of a gentleman. Adrian, Leo drawled as he walked in. So this is where you've been hiding? Such a tiny place for someone with your talents. Why not come and beg me? Maybe, out of family affection, I'd give you a position. He fired off his signature taunts the moment he stepped through the door. Did you come here just to say these meaningless things? Adrian asked coldly. Old Master hinted before he died that you were working on some new technology. Now that you're bankrupt, the project's stalled. Why not sell the core tech to me? I'll pay a good price, Leo said, putting on his best overbearing CEO smirk. Not for sale. You can leave now. Your company's gone. Playing tough won't help. Better make the smart choice. Leo clearly valued the technology a lot and kept pressing. Watching him play CEO while remembering him getting dragged out of the hospital earlier, I suddenly felt a bit sorry for him. Maybe my sympathy was too obvious, because he turned to me and smirked. Look at you staring at me like that, trying to get my attention. I brushed my hair back and asked seriously, Leo, have you considered dyeing your hair green? Is there something wrong with your head? His smirk froze. Who are you insulting? Kevin jumped in immediately. Get out if you can't talk properly. This isn't your place. Don't mind him, sister-in-law. You haven't eaten, right? I'll order us some food. What do you want? Kevin pulled out his phone. I thought for a moment and decided to help Leo a bit more. Stir-fried vegetables, stir-fried bok choy, stir-fried broccoli, stir-fried leeks, stir-fried celery. Why all veggies? Sister-in-law, add some meat. We're not broke, Kevin protested. Poor guy had no idea what I was doing. I gave Leo a bright smile. Want to stay for lunch? Eating more green food is good for your health. Leo looked at me like I was an idiot, then turned back to Adrian. Think about what I said. I can make you a very generous offer. With that, he turned to leave. You sure you don't want to stay? I called after him. Today's dishes really suit you. Go home and eat something similar, and think it over carefully. I've done my best for you. Even I had to admire how kind I was. When I turned back, Adrian was staring at me. What? I frowned. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm puzzled, he said. About what? Why you're being so nice to him? What? I thought you hated him. I do. Then why would you order all those vegetables for him? I paused for 2 beats, then answered solemnly. Because eating more greens is good for your health. I want him to live longer and experience more of life's ups and downs. Kevin nearly choked. Adrian's lips twitched slightly, but he said nothing. At that moment, Kevin finally noticed the lunchbox. Whoa, is this homemade? Sister-in-law, let me try a bite. He reached for it. No. Adrian shot to his feet to snatch it back. Kevin dodged him and quickly took a bite. Can't catch me, can't catch me. He gagged and spat it out immediately. I froze. Was it really that bad? I had followed the recipe. Sure, it was a bit burnt, but it couldn't be that bad. Kevin crawled toward me dramatically. Sister-in-law, if Adrian did something to upset you, just tell him. There's no need to torture him like this. Adrian yanked the lunchbox out of his hands. Get lost. Kevin retreated, probably to continue vomiting in the restroom. Adrian picked through the food, tossed out the part Kevin had eaten, and prepared to eat the rest. Stop. Let's just order takeout today. I'll practice more, I said quickly. No need. Adrian calmly continued eating. Watching him, face unchanged, I began to suspect Kevin was just being dramatic. It couldn't be that bad. I grabbed some with my chopsticks for a taste, eager to try my first homemade dish. Adrian blocked me. If Nina makes a lunchbox for me, then only I get to eat it, he said calmly. You can eat the green dishes you just ordered. Stingy. Extremely stingy. So we sat together in his office. He ate my poison. I ate takeout. Peaceful afternoon. I even turned on the TV to see what was on. Recently, the stock price of Lay Group had been plunging. Their attempt to acquire land on the eastern outskirts had failed thanks to poor decision-making. No wonder Leo had been so desperate to get that tech from Adrian. His company was in trouble. I stared at the news on the screen. Eat. If it gets cold, your stomach will hurt, Adrian said, turning off the TV. I suddenly lost my appetite. In overbearing CEO novels, the male lead's love life might be a mess, but his business was always perfect. Even if he spent all day chasing the female lead, his company somehow never had any issues. Stocks falling because of bad decisions? That wasn't supposed to happen to a male lead. I thought about it for a while but got nowhere. Forget it. Living well myself was what mattered. Recently, my life had been very comfortable. Every day was calm. In the morning I went to the market. At noon I practiced cooking. In the afternoon I took lunch to Adrian. I loved this rhythm. Light, peaceful. No more fear of the plot. No more concern about where the protagonists were in their love story. They could live in their own world. I just wanted to live in mine. One day, after buying vegetables at the market, I passed a little flower shop. The bright flowers in the sun were instantly uplifting. I thought it'd be nice to put a bouquet in the living room. While I was choosing, I sensed someone next to me. I turned. Dr. Ethan Coe. Long time no see, Nina, he said, smiling gently, his gaze soft as late afternoon sunlight. Long time no see, Dr. Coe. Didn't expect to run into you here, I replied. Just passing by. Shh. Sure. This shop was next to a neighborhood wet market, several blocks from the hospital. Nobody just passed by here. I smiled politely anyway. Well, I should get going. Best not to tangle too much. Even if he was just a second male lead, I didn't want to be dragged into the plot. Nina, he called just as I turned. He placed a sprig of purple flowers in my hand. This is night hyacinth, he said. It means cut off the past, start over. He smiled warmly. I hope I can see you again next time, Nina. Then he turned and walked away. I stared at the pale purple flower in my hand, dazed. A flower symbolizing rebirth and cutting ties with the past. Shouldn't this be for the female lead? Why give it to me? Did Ethan know something? Did he know I wasn't the original Nina? A chill ran down my spine. My thoughts grew more chaotic. When Adrian came home that evening, I was still sitting on the sofa, staring at the flower. Nina, he called. I jolted. What are you thinking about? He frowned slightly as he took off his jacket. His gaze dropped to the flower on the coffee table. You bought flowers? That one was from Dr. Ko, I said. The doctor who treated my foot. Dr. Ko? Adrian's voice lowered. Yeah, the one from last time. I moved to put the flower away, but Adrian was faster. He picked it up and examined it. A doctor giving flowers to a patient he's only met a couple of times. What do you think he means by that? He asked coolly. How would I know? I muttered. Unless he really can see souls and wants to help me cross over. Before I could untangle my own messy thoughts, Adrian had quietly taken the flower away somewhere. A short while later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a flower delivery guy grinning at me. Hello, are you Miss Nina Lu? These are 999 red roses for you. Please sign here. I froze. I didn't order any flowers. Someone sent them to you, he said cheerfully. After signing, I struggled to carry the giant bouquet into the house. It was so free they'd send that many roses to a supporting character like me, I muttered. Just as I was about to show Adrian, he stepped out of his study. Red roses look better than night hyacinths, he said casually, then turned back into the room. I stood there, stunned. Wait, did that mean he sent this bouquet? Was he jealous? Hugging the roses, I tiptoed toward his study door and pressed my ear against it. The door suddenly opened. What do you want to eat? I'll cook, he said. We had an agreement. I cooked lunch. He cooked dinner. I straightened, pretending to be calm. Dumplings, with lots of vinegar. He nodded and headed for the kitchen. Soon, the smell of food drifted through the house. When I sat down, something bothered me. Why is there a plate of vinegar on your side and not mine? I asked. Because I like extra vinegar. I paused, then burst out laughing. Fair enough. Someone liked being jealous. Ethan haunted my dreams that night. I dreamt of him in a Taoist robe, chasing me with a yellow talisman, saying he wanted to send my wandering soul away. Creepy. But what Adrian said the next morning scared me even more. A banquet? I stared at him. A bankrupt man still needed to attend banquets? Uncle Tian is your dad's closest friend. It's his birthday celebration. We have to go. Get ready. We'll go pick out an evening gown later. On the surface I seemed calm, but inside I was panicking. Banquet. Evening gown. These things usually only happened on TV. I glanced down at my waist. Adrian had fed me so well I was a little rounder. Why hadn't he told me earlier? Too late to diet now. He took me straight to a fancy boutique. A stylist and makeup artist swarmed me. In the end, I was dressed in a backless black gown with a trailing hem that matched Adrian's black suit. We both wore a dark green lapel pin as an accent. Looking in the mirror, I had to admit we made a very good-looking couple. Definitely explosive enough for the venue. Sure enough, as soon as we walked into the hall, the noise died. People stared at us, then exchanged meaningful looks. Some sneered, some looked disdainful, whispering nasty things. Once a golden boy, now a fallen star. Those who used to flatter Adrian now no longer bothered to hide their true color. Everyone wanted a good seat for the show. I glanced at him. His back was still straight, his expression unchanged, as if he didn't feel the poisonous atmosphere at all. Whether before or after his fall, he stayed true to himself. We'll go upstairs, give Uncle Tian his gift, and then head home, he murmured. I nodded. We successfully delivered the gift and were about to leave. Let's go. I'm starving, I whispered. To fit into this dress, I'd skipped both lunch and dinner. I was ready to gnaw on someone. Mr. and Mrs. Lay, don't be in such a hurry to leave. A richly dressed woman in her 40s stopped us. It's been so long since we've seen you. You two never show up at any parties these days, though I suppose. She laughed behind her hand. Given your current situation, maybe it's not appropriate to attend. The fake sweetness in her voice was nauseating. Sorry, you are. I tilted my head. I'm terrible with faces. The ladies I used to socialize with were apparently on a very different level from you. If she wanted to be snide, I could do it better. Her expression twisted before she forced a smile. Don't misunderstand, Mrs. Lay. I meant no harm. It's just that my youngest son will be performing later. I was hoping you two would do me the honor of staying to watch. So this was a show off my kid trap in front of a room full of adults. Apparently, rich or poor, parents were the same. I was about to politely refuse when piano music started. A boy of 8 or 9 sat perfectly straight at the grand piano, playing slowly. So this was her youngest. Leaving now would be awkward, so we stayed until he finished. He played well. I clapped a few times in genuine appreciation, then tugged Adrian's sleeve. Time to go. Mrs. Han blocked us again. I heard Mrs. Lay is also an excellent pianist. Would you honor us with a performance? She asked. What? I blinked. The original Nina had learned piano for a year as a child and quit because it was too hard. After all these years, she couldn't even play Happy Birthday. As for me, I was more suited to fighting than playing piano. Such talent. Miss Lu, Leo's voice chimed in. He'd appeared out of nowhere with a glass of wine in one hand and Elaine in the other. If you're too shy to play, Adrian can perform instead. Family and all. It was obvious that Mrs. Han and Leo had planned this. Their goal, humiliate us. If we backed out, we'd look like cowards. If we played and butchered the piece, we'd be mocked even more. Leo really knew how to play dirty. What's wrong? Don't tell me you don't dare. He taunted. People began to gather, curious. Adrian started to say something, but I cut him off. Nothing to be afraid of. I'll do it, I said calmly. Leo smiled triumphantly, ready to deliver the coup de grace. I beat him to it. Perfect. Thank you, dear, I said sweetly. Don't embarrass your uncle and me, okay? His smile froze. The crowd looked stunned. Go on, my dear nephew, I encouraged, patting his shoulder. That kid earlier played so well. As family, we can't be worse, right? Are you insane? Leo hissed. Is that how you talk to your aunt? I scolded. Look at that child. He played perfectly without fuss. You know 8 languages and a dozen instruments. Why are you hesitating? Useless. What's the point of raising you? Silently, I gave myself a thumbs up. That was some high-level parenting. Sorry, everyone, I said with a gracious smile. Our nephew's not very sensible. We'll save his performance for another day. While they were still processing that, I grabbed Adrian's wrist and tried to slip away. He wouldn't budge. He was looking at me with amused eyes. Is this how you plan to seduce me? He asked softly. If we don't run now, Leo will come to his senses and it'll be harder to leave. Adrian interlaced his fingers with mine and turned back to the crowd. I'll remember everything you've done tonight, he said calmly, his gaze sweeping the room. Given his old reputation, the threat landed. Faces darkened. The crowd parted automatically, forming a path for us. Only after we stepped out of the hall did I finally relax. Don't be fooled by my sharp tongue. Inside, I'd been forcing it the whole time. Where to now, Miss Lu? Adrian teased. Eat. What else? I'm starving, I said, then spotted a Jianbing cart parked outside the venue. Had I gone delirious from hunger? A place like this actually allowed a street food cart to park at the entrance. Perfect timing. Hungry girl. Jianbing cart. 1 Jianbing, add sausage, extra egg, spicy dried meat, and fried chicken. Thanks, I said. Tonight had been rough. I deserved a treat. The vendor was a woman with a headscarf and mask. She started cooking smoothly. The more I watched, the more familiar she looked. Have we met before? I asked. No, she said quickly, pulling her mask higher. We have, I insisted. You used to sell Jianbing under my old building. I knew it. You looked familiar. That first time I had your Jianbing, it was under my place. I remember you bought once and never came back, she said with an awkward laugh. So you moved and I just followed the money to this area. I took the Jianbing and walked away with Adrian. Once we were farther, I suddenly shivered. How did she know my last name is Lu? Do you think she's a spy? Is the Jianbing poison? Adrian rubbed my head. What are you imagining now? Just eat it. Nothing is that dramatic. This is a novel world. Overbearing CEOs wake up in 500 square meter beds. A street vendor recognizing you is nothing. Since he said it was fine, it was probably fine. I took a big bite. It was so good I almost cried. Poison or not, I'd accept my fate. Sorry, Nina, Adrian said quietly. I dragged you into all this. If not for that banquet, you wouldn't have gone through. If not for that banquet, I wouldn't have eaten this amazing Jianbing. I cut him off, smiling. Why do you always apologize? You apologized when my foot got hurt too. It's not like you. I only apologize to you, he said, eyes crinkling as he smiled. Dangerous. Handsome men made bad decisions look good. After the banquet, Adrian threw himself into work even harder. I, in turn, became even more diligent about bringing him lunch. One day, while I was watching him eat, my phone rang. Hello, Nina. Mom's gentle voice came through. What are you doing? Busy lately? I'm bringing lunch to Adrian. Things have been hectic and I've neglected you and Dad. That's on me. Bringing lunch to Adrian? Your dad loves you so much and he's never eaten your cooking, Dad complained in the background. I'm just practicing, I said. I'm basically a top chef now. I'll come home and cook for you tonight. After some happy laughter, I hung up and started packing up. Who are you cooking for? Adrian asked. My parents. I'll go visit them. It's been a while. I picked up the lunchbox, ready to leave, but Adrian caught my wrist. His expression was conflicted. I thought we agreed, he said. Food you cook is only for me. You're so stingy. You used that excuse to monopolize my cooking and force me to eat takeout. I still haven't tasted my own food properly. This time, I'm going to impress Dad. How about I come too? It's been a while since I saw your parents. I'll cook, Adrian offered, reaching for his jacket. I pushed him back. You're way too busy. How can you leave the company? I'll go myself. You focus on work. Good luck, okay? I breezed out, humming, already dreaming of Dad's braised ribs. Mom and Dad were waiting at the door of the villa when I arrived. "Nina, you're finally here." Mom wrapped me in a hug. "Come in, sweetheart. The ribs are done," Dad called. Same house, same braised ribs, same parents, now looking a bit more hesitant than usual. "If you've got something to say it. Watching you like this makes me uncomfortable," I said around a rib bone. "Nina, I heard about what happened at that banquet. Don't let those people get to you." "If I'd been there, I'd have torn them apart for bullying my baby girl," Mom growled. "Exactly." Mom's arguing skills were legendary. Dad had never won. Dad looked proud. "I'm fine," I said, gnawing another rib. I thought of Leo's face when I called him dear nephew and felt much better. "As long as you're happy and getting along with Adrian, we're relieved," Mom said. "Do you have enough spending money?" "We still have some." She stood up to get money, but I stopped her. "I'm fine. Adrian's small company is doing okay. He's busy with a big bid. Actually, he'll be fine. He's good at business," I said. Dad beamed again. "He's good, but you're even better. You bring him lunch every day. Your cooking must be amazing now. Show us your skills today," Dad urged. I wiped the sauce off my mouth and headed to the kitchen. Motivated by my parents' proud looks, I threw myself into cooking. Oil splashed everywhere. Sometime later, I walked out with my masterpiece, scrambled eggs with tomatoes that looked like abstract art. "Tada, please enjoy," I announced, placing it on the table. Mom smiled gently and reached for her chopsticks, but Dad blocked her. "Honey, I always let you go first. Let me have the honor this time," he said solemnly, like he was going into battle. He took a bite, then ran straight to the bathroom to vomit. Mom quietly set her chopsticks down. Her eyes looked like she'd just survived an earthquake. After a long silence, she asked carefully, "Sweetheart, this is the food you've been bringing Adrian every day?" I couldn't answer. Mom sighed deeply. "If something's bothering you, you can tell me, but don't use your cooking to hurt people." "Mom," I croaked. "It really did look fine. Smelled okay. The taste was just difficult to explain. No wonder Adrian always forbade me from eating my own cooking. No wonder he insisted my cooking was only for him and made me eat his food or takeout. I honestly had no idea it was that bad." After cleaning up Mom and Dad, I returned home in a daze. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Adrian in the kitchen, wearing an apron, cooking under the warm glow of the light. Normally I'd stand and admire the view. Today I just collapsed onto the sofa and sighed. "What's wrong, Nina?" he asked. "From now on, I'm not bringing you lunch anymore," I muttered. "I have zero talent for cooking." "Then I'll starve," he said in a mourning tone. "Better that than being poisoned." I glared at him, angry that he'd endured my food for so long, and even angrier that I didn't realize. He patted my head and laughed. "You're adorable," he said. "Did I poison you into stupidity? What's adorable about any of this?" Before I could explode, he added quietly, "Love makes everything look better." The air between us shifted. "Adrian," I said, how about I sign you up for a national iron stomach championship? You'd win for sure." He didn't answer, just walked away in silence. I stayed on the sofa, seriously wondering how much prize money an iron stomach title would bring. A week later, Adrian finally finished his marathon of overtime. The bidding, from a banquet straight to a tender meeting. "Colorful life. This is the result of all our efforts these past weeks," he said. "I want you to see it." "Wow, confident much, President Lay?" I teased. "Of course," he said. "Oh, and your dear nephew will be there too." I rolled my eyes. Ever since the banquet, he kept calling Leo your dear nephew. Leo's the male lead. Even if the world crumbled, he was usually invincible in business. But somehow I had faith Adrian wouldn't lose. The bidding took place in a large hall. Leo arrived with Elaine, arrogance radiating from him. He glanced at us like we were beneath him. A row of assistants followed behind him like peacocks. Adrian and I sat calmly opposite. Kevin leaned over and whispered, "Does his face always look like it's cramping?" I almost laughed out loud. After all the presentation, the results were announced. The winning bid goes to Adrian Lay. We walked out under Leo's furious glare. "Adrian, beating me once doesn't mean anything," Leo spat. "Don't get cocky." I nearly burst out laughing. Classic line. First episode, loser CEO. Adrian just raised an eyebrow. If I remember correctly, the exact line is, "Beating me once means nothing. The road ahead is long. We'll see." Standing beside him, I thought, my husband delivered threats way better. "Leo, don't argue with him," Elaine piped up, eyes moist. "He's already bankrupt. Just pity him." I was ready to throw in a few barbs of my own when a Jianbing cart suddenly rolled down a nearby slope and slammed straight into Elaine. "Elaine!" Leo howled. I stared at the familiar cart and sighed internally. Her again. Leo carried Elaine to the hospital. I dragged Adrian along to watch the show. "Doctor, save her. Save Elaine." Leo shouted so loudly half the hospital heard him. "She just has a minor fracture," the doctor said calmly. "She just needs rest. Let other patients in. They've been waiting." "Can you even call yourself a doctor? Look how much pain she's in. Get every specialist to examine her." Here it was, the classic CEO bullies doctors scene. "Her injury really doesn't require that," the doctor said helplessly. "Please make room for others." "Leo, I'm scared," Elaine cried. "Will I be okay?" "Don't be scared. hollered. I won't let anything happen to you, he vowed. Their Mary Sue plot was playing out in high definition right before me. Cringe level maximum. Bring me your director, Leo roared. If anything happens to Elaine, you're all fired. The doctor quietly picked up the phone. Security, we have a troublemaker here. A few minutes later, Leo was dragged out. Somehow the script fell off. See? Someone behind me muttered. I turned. Ethan again. This time, the gentle smile was gone. His eyes held something deep and unreadable. Can we talk? He asked. I glanced at Adrian. Go ahead. I'll wait here, he said. I followed Ethan to a small garden behind the hospital. She's hurt again, Ethan said. Do you know? Before this, she was never injured. No matter what happened, being bullied, even kidnapped, she'd never get hurt. Leo always saved her in time. Someone else always got hurt instead. Someone else? I asked. For example, me. Ethan opened his right hand. A thin scar ran across his palm. If you didn't look closely, you'd miss it. The last time she was kidnapped, I went to rescue her, he said. She came out perfectly fine. I got cut, lost too much blood. I'll never be able to hold a scalpel properly again. His voice was calm, but the words weren't. I was supposed to sacrifice everything for her and never complain. That's insane. Why? He asked, looking straight at me. Why? Because you were written to be a gentle, self-sacrificing second male lead, I thought. In that moment, I finally understood what had been feeling wrong. The story was entering its ending arc. The protagonist's halo was fading. Supporting characters were waking up. The world was no longer tightly controlled by the original plot. Everyone was starting to live their own lives. You're different, Nina, Ethan said. The last time you came to see me, I could tell. You changed a lot. I figured maybe you were like me, free from some kind of constraint. He smiled faintly. At first, after I fully woke up, I thought about getting revenge on Elaine. But then I realized I'd already wasted enough of my life on her. From now on, I want to live for myself. I exhaled slowly. That's good, I said. You deserve that. What are you two doing here? Elaine's voice cut through the air. She stood there with red eyes, leaning on crutches. Ethan, she whimpered. You've been so distant lately. Is it because she's clinging to you? Who's clinging to who? I snapped. Your husband just got hauled out by security, and you're here chasing another man. This has nothing to do with you. She shot back. First you cling to Adrian, now you're after Ethan. I clung to who? I laughed. Maybe worry about yourself. Your husband is being dragged away, and you're here causing trouble. Elaine opened her mouth, but Ethan interrupted. Elaine, he said calmly, you're married. If you keep running to me like this, people will misunderstand. Let's stop contacting each other. He walked away without looking back. Elaine stared at his retreating figure, then limped after him. I clicked my tongue. Even the author wouldn't recognize this plot anymore. I headed back to Adrian so we could go home and eat. Over the next little while, I heard various bits of gossip. Leo kept dragging Elaine to the police station, demanding that the Jianbing seller be prosecuted and imprisoned. The police kept explaining it was a civil matter at best. She'd pay a fine, maybe be detained for a bit. Jail? Not happening. Leo tried to throw his CEO weight around again and got dragged out. Again. One day, I was wandering around looking for food, texting Adrian about Leo's latest clown act, when someone blocked my path. She looked about my age. I'm the Jianbing seller, she said after pulling down her mask halfway and miming beating eggs. You're so young? I asked. I'm your age. She gestured toward a cafe. Got time to talk? She asked. We sat down with coffees. My name's Vivian Wang, she said. My family used to run a restaurant business with branches nationwide. Then why sell Jianbing? I asked. Because one night, Elaine showed up at a banquet in a cheap white dress. I made fun of her. She had my whole family ruined, Vivian said bitterly. I winced. Can I ask your family name? I said, already suspecting. Wang. Of course. The infamous Wang family from the original novel. I regret it so much, she said, eyes reddening. Because of a few comments, my parents and brother lost everything. I handed her a tissue. It's not your fault, I said. You couldn't control yourself? I controlled myself just fine, she growled. Her dress was atrocious. Completely white, like she was at a funeral. How was I supposed to not comment? I took back the tissue. Okay, then maybe not exactly uncontrollable, I muttered. She could have snapped back, or slapped me, but destroying my whole family? Vivian sniffed. Is that necessary? I patted her shoulder. At least you're alive. My husband's bankrupt too. We're doing okay. Your situation is different, she objected. Adrian is only temporarily down. With his skills, he'll bounce back. I don't have that kind of luck. Tears welled up again. It took so much effort to get this Jianbing cart going, and the police just confiscated it after Leo's complaint. They towed away my beautiful cart, she said mournfully. You didn't crash into Elaine on purpose, right? I asked. You're not planning revenge, are you? Thinking about Ethan's comments, I had to ask. Of course not, Vivian said quickly. I'd rather avoid her. I came to find your husband, actually. I've followed you a few times with my cart. Don't be scared. I just wanted to talk to him. Talk to him about what? I squinted. You better not be after his looks like I am. My family's been in the food business for years, she said, eyes lighting up for the first time. We have a few secret recipes. I wanted to see if Adrian would invest. I'm confident we'd make money. Food. Her eyes were like 2 stars. I see, I said. Let me ask him. A talented chef reduced to selling jianbing? Too tragic. It's not that bad. I made tens of thousands a month, she said. My hand shot out and grabbed her collar. Teach me how to make jianbing. We'll be partners. You cook. I provide the cart and capital. We split the profit, I said urgently. Tens of thousands a month? No way, I was missing that. Given that my cooking was classified as a public health hazard, we settled on her doing the cooking and me handling equipment and capital. That night, I clung to Adrian's sleeve. Adrian, I want to buy a jianbing cart. Will you support me? I wheedled. He raised an eyebrow. What for? To sell jianbing, obviously. I'll earn tens of thousands a month and support us. You can relax, I said. He chuckled helplessly and tossed me a bank card. Here. I skipped straight to the bank. One look at the balance and my legs almost gave out. Enough to buy 3,000 jianbing carts. Did you rob a bank? I demanded a short time later, slamming the card down on Adrian's desk. This is what I earned, he said. But you went bankrupt, I said weakly. The domestic company went bankrupt, he corrected. I still have overseas companies. I've been moving everything back and merged them with the one I started with Kevin. He ruffled my hair. Forget a cart. If you wanted to buy a sports car, I wouldn't stop you. I stared for a few seconds. From broke heroine to rich wife in one plot twist. Dizzying. I took the card home to show Dad and Mom. Look what Adrian gave me, I said proudly. Dad grinned and pulled out his own card. Look what Adrian gave me, he said. I gaped. He gave you one too. Last time we helped him with money, he said to treat it as an investment. Now he sends me profit every month, Dad said smugly. While gnawing a rib, I had a flash of genius. Dad, invest in me, I said. In what? He asked warily. Food, I declared. He turned away, muttering, with your cooking, that's a public safety incident. I'm not the one cooking, I protested. My friend is. After I pitched the idea properly, he reluctantly agreed. So Dad and I became investors. Vivian handled the kitchen. We rented a storefront downtown and opened a small restaurant. Business exploded. The place was packed every day. Revenue climbed steadily. I sat counting money until my cheeks hurt from smiling. Adrian promoted the restaurant everywhere. His usually cold social media feed turned into new restaurant grand opening, 50% off. Special new dish from the boss lady today. Anyone who saw it would think his account got hacked. While our lives grew sweeter, more news about Leo and Elaine came trickling in. Leo neglected his work, chasing Elaine everywhere. Elaine couldn't find Ethan anymore and grew depressed. The two argued constantly until she ran away while pregnant. The CEO's pregnant wife had run away. They were still living inside the old Mary Sue script. I set my phone down and went back to calculating the restaurant's earnings. Money smelled much better than drama. Later that day, I poked Adrian. President Lay, busy? Want to have dinner with me? He looked up, smiling. If the boss lady invites me, I'll always make time, he said. We strolled hand in hand through the spring night. Streetlights reflected off the pavement like scattered stars. Didn't matter who the original protagonists were. We were the main characters of our own story now. Extra story. Ethan Coe. My name is Ethan Coe, and I'm a doctor. I always thought I was blessed. I came from a good family. My parents loved each other, and people often complimented my looks. My life was smooth. Good grades, med school, becoming a doctor who saved lives. Then I met Elaine Shao. One look into her eyes, and my heart lost control. From that day on, my life tumbled into darkness. I was like a moth to a flame. I dove into her world and got burned. I adored her. I loved her. I was willing to sacrifice everything for her. When she fought with Leo Lay, I was there to comfort her. When she made up with Leo, I went home alone. I was like a cheap motel on a busy street, always open for her, always waiting, while she could leave any time. They spent 5 years in a tangle of breakups and makeups. 5 years of romance for them. 5 years of hell for me. I had long realized this world was abnormal. My moments of clarity grew longer. When Elaine didn't need me, I was myself, Ethan. But the moment she called, I became the gentle second male lead again, full of quiet pain and unwavering devotion. I tried to escape the script. I locked myself at home, blocked her number, even flew abroad in the middle of the night. It never worked. She always got through, and whenever she needed me, I appeared beside her. Then came the kidnapping. I went to rescue her. She emerged unscathed. I left the warehouse with blood pouring from my hand, tendons damaged so badly I'd never wield a scalpel again. They stood there in that filthy warehouse, hugging and crying, resolving years of misunderstanding. I stood a few steps away, watching them, my head screaming at me to drag them both down with me. But my body stayed rooted, locked in the role of heartbroken second male lead. Soon after, they held a grand wedding. They kissed on stage. I watched from below, feeling oddly relieved. I sensed that all this madness was nearing its end. Then Nina Lu walked into my office. From the way she spoke, the way she looked at the world, I knew she was different from before. I had a bold thought. Maybe she and I were the same, awake inside a world that used to control us. I started watching her. I even contrived to run into her at a flower shop and offered her a night hyacinth. The more I saw, the more certain I became. Nina was special. The world was changing. My mind mind was clearer. When Elaine cried into my chest, the old ache was still there, but it passed quickly. I could pull away. The day the Jianbing cart hit Elaine and they came to the hospital, I knew it was over. For the first time, she was hurt. The rules of the world were breaking. The script no longer protected them. I thought about revenge. I even drafted plans. But then I saw Nina outside the crowd, watching them like an audience member. I realized I didn't need to do anything. I'd already lost too much time to those two. This ridiculous world had held me hostage long enough. Every second from now on belonged to me. No longer the gentle, tragic second lead. Just Ethan Coe. Nothing more, nothing less. Extra story. Nina Louie was eating jianbing, sprawled on the sofa under the air conditioner, watching TV dramas, when the butler walked in with a man. I now had a villa, a car, and a professional butler, all thanks to Adrian's efforts. Ma'am, this is the chef applying for the position, Butler Zhang said. Nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm Charles Chu. I studied culinary arts in the UK and US. I specialize in Western cuisine and desserts, the man said politely. In his crisp suit and neat hairstyle, he looked more like a corporate elite than a chef. He handed over his resume. His credentials were impressive. Charles, I began. He looked at me expectantly, waiting for my test. Can you make jianbing? I asked. What? His expression cracked. Jianbing. It's crispy and fragrant. Can you make it? I leaned forward eagerly. Our restaurant was doing so well that Vivian and I were thinking about expanding. We needed more chefs who could handle signature items. Charles's mouth twitched. Ma'am, I'm a professional chef with multiple international awards. My salary expectations are 50% above market rate. I raised one finger wordlessly. Ma'am, I'm from Tianjin. Jianbing is my specialty, he said smoothly, switching to a Tianjin accent for emphasis. You can rest assured. Perfect. Butler Zhang, take him to the restaurant and let Vivian test him, I said. They left. I flopped back on the sofa and opened the restaurant's monthly financial report. All those digits made me laugh out loud. You're laughing so happily. Counting money again? Adrian said as he walked in, loosening his tie. You're home early, I said. It was only 4 p.m. Came home early to be with you, he said. Really? Not really. I still have work upstairs, he admitted. I clicked my tongue. I sliced some fruit and brought it up to his study. Fruit break, I announced, nudging the door open. He quickly hid something in a drawer. Just leave it there. I'll have it later, he said stiffly. The mighty Adrian flustered, suspicious. I set the plate down and left. After changing clothes, I drove straight to the restaurant to bother Vivian. It was evening rush hour. Customers flowed in non-stop. A crowd gathered near the open kitchen, cheering and clapping. Charles was performing his jianbing skills. A few hours ago he'd been a stiff suit. Now he was in an apron and chef's hat, grinning like the human embodiment of sunshine. This guy really has two faces, I muttered. Nina, what are you doing here? I was just going to call you. Vivian pulled me into the office. What's up? I sprawled on her chair. I wanted to praise you, she said, dropping into the opposite seat. That chef you found is amazing. He cooks well, and he knows how to entertain guests. He's perfect. I barely heard her. My mind was stuck on Adrian's weird behavior. What's with that sigh? She asked. Don't tell me. She leaned in, eyes sparkling. Marital crisis already? Can you not be so excited over my misery? I snatched her sunflower seeds. Adrian's working. You're busy with the restaurant. If you two don't communicate, you'll drift apart, she said in a know-it-all tone. What should I do then? I asked. An evil smile spread across her face. That was how I ended up going home with a scandalously short dress and a paper bag. I sat on the bed, stared at it, took a deep breath, and put it on. Then I lay down and posed. If everything went according to Vivian's plan, Adrian would open the door and be stunned into submission. Reality. I held the pose for 10 minutes, got tired, closed my eyes to rest, and fell asleep. In my dream, I stood on a sun-drenched beach. A woman lounged on a chair with a drink, long legs crossed casually. She looked familiar. I walked closer. When she turned, I dropped my own drink. It was a face I'd never seen before, but the eyes and smile were too familiar. Nina, she said with a smile. You know me? I asked. Of course. Because I am Nina, too. My heart clenched. She was the original owner. Where are you now? Are you still in this body? I asked. She chuckled. No, I don't belong to this time and space anymore. I'm a rich businesswoman now, with a young playboy boyfriend. Much better than that coldish Adrian of yours. He's not cold, I snapped automatically. She rolled her eyes. So you still like him? I'll never understand how you tolerate that man. I wanted to explain, but she grabbed my hand, her voice turning serious. There's not much time. I just want to ask one thing. Take good care of my parents. We can't come back. Before I could respond, a bright light surrounded her. She smiled and faded away. I jolted awake. Sweat soaked my forehead. My heart was racing. It was morning. Adrian was gone. He must have left for work. I sat up and reached for my clothes, only to find that the seductive mini dress had vanished, replaced by my usual long-sleeve pajamas. That man. He'd changed my clothes while I slept. Any attempt at romance from now on would make me feel like a clown. I washed up in a daze, still thinking about the dream. It felt too real to be just a dream. dream? Thinking hard about something? Adrian's voice made me jump. You didn't go to work? I glanced at the clock. It was already 9:30. Not today. I want to spend the day with my wife, he said. He pushed me into the walk-in closet and handed me a set of casual clothes. He'd gone with sporty outfits for both of us. Couple outfits? I asked. Yeah. Hurry and get changed. I picked them out, he said. After a quick breakfast, we got into the car. Where are we going? I asked. Movies. There's a new romance out. I bought tickets, he said, unusually cheerful. At the theater, he bought popcorn and drinks. We sat in the dark like a normal couple, sharing snacks, holding hands in secret. After the movie, he took me to the amusement park. After that, a candlelit dinner. What's going on with you today? I asked over steak. I'm taking Nina on a proper date, he said seriously. I planned it carefully. My cheeks ached from smiling. What's next then? I asked. You'll see, he said, winking. After dinner, he drove us up a hill. Sunrise? I asked. We're early. Not sunrise, he said. Fireworks. He pointed up. Bright colors bloomed across the night sky. The romantic cliché was killing me. My heart, however, didn't care and was hammering away. Nina, he said softly, and suddenly knelt on one knee, pulling out a ring. Thank you for coming into my life, he said. Will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision as I nodded. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me under the fireworks. We never did things properly, he murmured later. We skipped dating, proposals, a real wedding. I want to give you all of that. The 10th of next month is a good day. Let's set our wedding then. I bit into an apple lazily. But we're already married, I said. Adrian had basically swung by the registry office between meetings. Efficient, yes. Romantic, no. We can do it again, properly, he insisted. How do you want it? Slowly, I decided. We dated for a long time. He gave me flowers, surprises, different little romantic gestures every day. Finally, I agreed to start planning the wedding. One day, we went to the restaurant to drop off invitations. Since President Lay and our major shareholder are getting married, how much should I give as a gift? Vivian sighed dramatically as she took the envelope. I'm going broke because of you too. Before I could retort, a commotion started outside. Come on, is that really necessary over a few jianbing? A familiar voice complained. We went out to find Charles arguing with a man sprawled on the floor. The man had eaten 3 jianbing in a row, then collapsed, clutching his stomach and groaning loudly. We use fresh ingredients every day. Nothing's wrong with our food, Charles insisted. You're just here to cause trouble. I bent down. Sir, if you're really in pain, we should go to the hospital, I said. I'm not going anywhere. Give me 10,000 and we'll settle it privately. Otherwise, I'm not getting up. Let's see how you run your business with me lying here, he said, face hidden. Classic scammer script. As Vivian pulled out her phone to call the police, the man panicked. Don't call the cops. 5,000. We can settle for 5,000, he said, scrambling up. His face was scruffy and tired, but unmistakably Leo. After some stunned silence, we pulled him into the office. How did you end up like this? I asked. After Elaine ran away with the baby, I chased her to the ends of the earth, he said bitterly. I neglected the company. The shareholders were already unhappy. We fought, reconciled. The company fell apart. I decided to marry a rich heiress to save it, but he swallowed hard. She miscarried, he said, then took the rest of my money and ran. The company collapsed completely. I didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. So I began. I heard Elaine went to the harbor, he said. I want to go after her. But since the bankruptcy, I've been blacklisted. No flights, no high-speed trains. Someone said they could smuggle me there, but it costs 10,000. I don't have it. I glanced at Adrian. He was watching Leo with a complicated expression. One corner of his mouth lit. What should we do? I asked silently. Whatever you want, he replied with his eyes utterly unreliable. In the end, I gave Leo tens of thousands in cash. He thanked me profusely, promising to pay me back when he had the money. I didn't hold my breath. On the way home, I leaned back in my seat. Your nephew has fallen so far he's extorting restaurants now. No reaction from you? I asked. Adrian chuckled. You really think he was just scamming? What do you mean? I frowned. There are cameras in every restaurant. If this were a real scam, the owner would have called the cops immediately. Leo's not that stupid. He chose your restaurant on purpose. He gave me a knowing look. He knows you'd give him money. Consider it progress. At least he knows how to bow his head now. We're family. Giving him some money is fine. Back then, he didn't go after my father-in-law's company too ruthlessly either. He parked. Come on, sweetheart. Stop thinking about other men. Think about our wedding instead. He leaned over and unbuckled my seatbelt, his voice low and warm. He wasn't wrong. More important than Leo and Elaine's never-ending drama was our own ceremony. We finalized guest lists, flowers, decorations. Every detail had to be perfect. Later, I heard that Leo had indeed reached the harbor and found Elaine. Most of the money he brought had been spent already. Still, he tried to rebuild something with her. Elaine had no skills, no job, and nowhere to go. She clung to him. They stayed stuck in their web of love and resentment. As for me, under a cloudless blue sky and the blessings of everyone I love, I finally walked down the aisle in a white wedding dress. Adrian waited for me at the end of the red carpet, smiling so gently my heart trembled. He held out his hand. I placed mine in his. We exchanged vows. In wealth or poverty, in sickness or health, we would walk together, hand in hand. I smiled, bathed in the soft golden light of the decorations, and looked at the man beside me. Adrian, I said quietly, I'm really glad I met you. Thank you for sticking with this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Lumaryn Stories so we can keep traveling through more worlds together. See you in the next story.